Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
I would like to introduce our third member for the show today, which is my hangover.
Your hangover is a character, is a paid extra.
Paid extra, yeah. It's making an appearance. Very dark, husky tones for the hangover character. Say hello, hangover.
Hello.
So I don't know where I was going with that, but like, yes, and let's go.
Oh, fucking hell.
George is imbibing my inner consciousness as it stands. Up the tildes, everyone. It's if you don't like sports ball, now's the time to get onto sports ball.
For those, just let me translate for non-Australians listening to the podcast. Up the means like on ya, as in like go, like well done, you're rooting for them. And then Tildes is an abbreviation of Matildas, which is the name of the Australian female soccer team who have been proved to be quite successful in recent weeks, as I understand it.
Yes. It was a very tense night last night in Australia as the penalty went to a penalty shootout and then sudden death penalties, and the game went for like 2 hours. It was a long time, but we won.
Won against France, I believe.
Yes, we beat the Frogs, and now we can live in peace.
Okay.
Can we call them Frogs?
I don't think we do anymore.
It's not racial, is it? It's just a weird discriminatory term that we use to minimize the French culture.
It was racialized. Cut that.
Sure, it's fine. It's all good.
So it's a news and politics podcast. We've reached the extent of my soccer knowledge. Female or male. That's about all I know about soccer. I understand everyone's very excited about it. I'm happy for them. Happy for you. Obviously, I don't think it's coincidence that Australia won in the match in the World Cup soccer, and you turn up to the podcast today hungover. I don't know that those two things are necessarily coincidental.
There's a correlation, but whether or not it's causation remains to be.
No, the alcohol was the causative element. Yeah, no,
yeah.
But it was tangential. It was related. It was part of the milieu, to quote our French friends.
Indeed.
So, is there anything else with that? So that puts Australia through to the quarterfinals or something, or semi-finals?
We've got it's the semi, I think. So we got two more games in theory if we keep going, and that's it. And then we get a big trophy at the end of it, and everyone claps everyone else on the back, and then we go about forgetting about women's sport for the next 4 years.
People have been very excited. I have to say, obviously, I think it's good for. It's good for the sport. It's good for women and girls to see, your women and girls succeeding in Australian sport.
100%.
I feel slightly funny about it because it's like I am engaged in sport, not at all. I cannot emphasize to you how little I have contact with the reality of the sports world. It's really the only time I get any sort of sporting knowledge is when I accidentally leave the TV too long after Insiders on ABC, and then it goes to Offsiders where and I'm washing the dishes and I can't turn it off, and then some sports knowledge leaks in by accident, just by osmosis. But that's great.
Well,
I'm glad. I'm excited that people are excited.
Wednesday night, George. Wednesday night's the next game, so you can turn on the TV. It's free to air. There's this thing called free to air television that you can listen to with your earphones.
I haven't heard of it. Actually, I'm pretty sure my antenna doesn't work. So I've got the way I watch ABC. The only live to air television I watch is on ABC, and that's through the iView app that's on the television. So I'm streaming it through the internet. It's not actually working through the TV as a TV, just because I don't think the antenna works properly. So, and I have been too lazy to get that fixed. So I might be, that analogy that Plato had of the man in the cave, staring at shadows on the wall.
Yeah, that's you.
Basically me with free-to-air television.
Yeah, that and a big pile of dirt in your backyard.
There's a big pile of dirt, which I spent many hours digging and moving and sprinkling around today. This is my life. When I say all of this out loud, it makes me sound like some sort of primitive dirt man.
It does.
A little bit. I would like to say I'm well in the 21st century. I'm on...
You're fine. It's okay.
It's fine. I know what Twitter is. It's called X now.
It is. And you'll also be aware that there's been a bit of argy-bargy this week with the leaked report, then the findings from the report, and then the recommendations from the report into the trial of Bruce Lehrmann and the prosecution of that case. So it's a little confusing, so we're going to take you through a timeline of what happened. So basically, Brittany Higgins made a bunch of allegations that she was raped. They went to trial with the person that she was accusing. That trial was a mistrial because one of the jurors
was found to have committed juror misconduct and sort of brought some research material and left it in the jury box. And there was some
say, "Don't do your own research."
Yeah.
And then what did the guy do? He did his own research.
He did his own research and brought it in, and then left it in the sort of the jury room, which led people to sort of speculate that perhaps it had been done on purpose in order to cause a mistrial. But anyway, speculation, of course.
The prosecution, Director of Public Prosecutions, Shane Drumgold, decided not to proceed with another trial. They dropped the charges.
As a result of medical advice that had said
Correct.
that Brittany Higgins was not in shape mentally to go through that ordeal again, and in order to sort of preserve her life, they had decided not to go ahead and proceed with another trial.
And since then, it's been a bunch of shit fighting and political fallout on both sides. And basically, the next thing that really happened was that Shane Drumgold, the director of ACT Public Prosecutions, made a bunch of statements about the police's handling of the case and how it all went down. There probably was some things that needed to be investigated, and so they went, "Well, we better do an inquiry."
He was pushing for an inquiry, saying that he'd received political pressure and that things weren't right, things were rotten in the state of Denmark. It needed to be investigated, and there needed to be an inquiry, and there was an inquiry. And it seemed pretty quickly, right from the get-go, that as the inquiry started, the inquiry's attentions turned not from this whole goddamn system is corrupt, but they turned more to Mr. Shane Drumgold as the focus, and it seemed like it was...
he made some stuff up.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. Basically, the questioning in the inquiry was suggesting that Shane Drumgold made assertions that later turned out not to be true about the conduct of the police and what he viewed as political pressure to drop the case and things like that. He'd made those allegations. Now, the allegation from the inquiry, or at least what you can surmise from their questioning, was they were saying, well, you made that up, that wasn't true. And he was saying, well, no, it was true at the time that I said it, I thought it was true. And so
it's just kind of like the whole thing of he thought there was a conspiracy against him, but there was actually no conspiracy. But
yeah, exactly. So it's like it wasn't a lie. Well, this is his argument. He goes, it wasn't a lie when I said it. I thought it was true at the time. So anyway, it says...
I think that the moon's made out of cheese, but I don't know any better. But turns out if I do a Wikipedia...
Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it. So anyway, I don't know. It does come across like a bit political, the way the inquiry turned, and it's ended up with, Mr.
Shane Drumgold has resigned.
Drumgold,
so what happened?
has resigned as a result of the report's findings. So, and they were pretty.
This is the thing:
the results of the inquiry were pretty damning against him. Like they were not complimentary, and he resigned that day. I think it was so.
So there was a report. So after the inquiry, they did all the hearings, which we heard about in the news sort of as they were happening. There was a report that was put together from the inquiry. You do an inquiry, you've got to have a report that follows it, because otherwise, what's the point of doing the inquiry? You need a paperweight to be able to hold down the stuff on your desk. Anyway, so this is where it even gets more broken. The person who was running the inquiry, who was
Mr. Sofronoff,
Walter Sofronoff, had basically leaked the report to a bunch of journalists before even telling the government.
Yeah, that's not cool.
And basically, from what we could tell, he basically went to a couple of journalists that he quote unquote trusted, and was like, bro, you're under an embargo, but like, don't release this. And they went, yeah, sure. We definitely won't release it. We definitely won't release it.
You can trust us, Australian media.
And like, lo and behold, they released it before the government had even been handed a copy of the report. So for like 3 or 4 days, Shane Drumgold was just like hauled through the coals, and then resigned as we said before.
That's what
as a
I
result
mean.
Of that.
It feels like it was a political kind of retribution type exercise against Shane Drumgold rather than a way of, uncovering the facts and like trying to remedy the situation, get to the truth of the matter. And so ironically, this whole report, which just says like, no, the whole system worked and everything was done correctly. The way it's played out has happened in a way that's like very political and raises the exact questions that existed in the first place about it being like a sort of a political process and, pressure being put on people and, leaking to media and all this sort of like, ironically, the process that was put in place to investigate the, alleged corruption was in and of itself a display of the corruption in the system, which is like, I don't know what the word for that is. I'm sure the Germans have a word for that. But there's definitely, I don't know, some sort of dramatic irony playing out here.
It's weird, isn't it? And now look, it's also important to note as part of this that the people that were interviewed as part of the inquiry, that they all found that it was just that a prosecution was brought against Bruce Lehrmann. Now, Bruce Lehrmann is suing a bunch of people at the moment for defamation, which, I mean, I guess if you're in his position, he's probably never going to work again at this rate. So
that's his legal right, I guess, to do that.
But so no one found that they're not saying that the prosecution shouldn't have taken place.
Yeah, it was, which is weird to me because it's like, how can all these things be true at the same time? It's like Sofronoff, I don't know. It just seems like there's things that are all being said, we're not saying that the conviction or the prosecution shouldn't have taken place. We're not saying that there was anything corrupt about the system, but all of these things are happening in a way that's like, I feel like some of these things are mutually exclusive of each other. You can't say like there were problems, but also the prosecution should have gone ahead exactly as it did. I don't know. There seems to me like some sort of unresolved tension there that doesn't quite make sense. Like,
I think from what I can, I haven't got a copy of the report. From what I've read of articles that are talking about the report, is that there were failings in the prosecution of the case. But
we're only saying that in retrospect because of juror misconduct, where if the trial was allowed to play out correctly, if there wasn't that juror misconduct and they did get a conviction, then everyone would be saying, nice work, Shane. Great job.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, it's only because the result wasn't what people were expecting that then there's been this inquiry process. Like, if everything had just gone off as everyone was thinking it would, then it would have been fine, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, they found that I think there were things like there were certain bits of evidence that were shown that he shouldn't have seen. Like things that were
shown to who? Sorry, say again.
So basically, there were bits of evidence that were seen by Shane Drumgold that shouldn't have been seen by him. And
I did see something about that.
So there's like, it's not like the whole thing is broken, but like even if they had found Bruce Lehrmann guilty, like some of this stuff would have been grounds for an appeal, right? Straight up,
could have been.
So like what I think the comments from the inquiry were that it was just really poor legal practice in terms of like some of the steps that they were taking as a part of the case in terms of chain of evidence and that kind of stuff. So
and I guess what Drumgold's argument is that like you're making sort of a mountain out of a molehill, like a lot of this anyway. So
he's defended. He said
he's defended himself, like, although I dispute many of the findings of the inquiry, except that the premature publicity surrounding me means that my office, the courts, and most importantly, the ACT public, could not presently have faith in the discharge of the functions of the Department of Public Prosecutions, he said. So
I just can't get over the fact that Sofronoff was like, I'm just going to give these reporters a copy of the fucking report.
I guess we know to a certain extent that that's how Canberra works, right? Is that, you know, people get backgrounded on and, you know, people like talk to journalists and leak stuff.
There's a difference, though, between going, oh, by the way, Jill, there's something coming down the line. Watch this space.
Sure.
Off the record, here's a bit of intel. Then going, here's a copy of the 300-page report. Just hold on to it for me for a little bit.
The argument could be made that, you know, someone doing that would be trying to like own the narrative as to what happens, right? Like it feels like it could be political, right? But yeah, that's Canberra. You know, at the end of Chinatown, he goes, "Hey man, that's Chinatown." That's how I feel. I was like, "Hey man, that's Canberra."
Speaking of Canberra, actually, let's start from the top. So you were listening to a podcast this week, right?
I was, as I often do.
As you often do. You're an avid podcast listener. You listen to them at double speed, is it? Or 1 point?
Well, it depends. So certain podcasts I listen to at double speed, where if it's just like I'm trying to download some information into my brain and they speak too slow, I'll just do it at 2 times speed. If it's like something I'm more listening to for enjoyment, like a comedy, you know, Keith and the Girl, or like a comedy podcast or something like that, I might do it at sort of 1.5 times speed. But it's all like
That's what you're saying. You're saying you're real smart and you can just download information in your brain. Is what you're saying. Yeah.
No, I just like if I gotta go fast. I think might be an ADD thing where I'm just like, I literally cannot listen to this at 1 time speed, otherwise I'll gouge my eyes out. I need to have the information go faster into my brain, please.
But
yeah,
so you listen to a podcast, and there was an ad in this podcast, correct?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So
what was that ad?
It's a little bit. Yes, thank you very much. I understand where we're going, Adam. So there's there was an ad. So it was a great podcast called Behind the Bastards, which is a sort of a historical podcast where they, you know, sort of go behind and tell the stories of great bastards from history. But they do a lot of these I think they're called programmatic ads, where they insert space into their podcast for some advertisements, and then it goes out and someone drops ads in there and they don't necessarily have anything to do with it. So what happens is, compared to some podcasts where they do like a live read for Casper mattresses or whatever, which is not a thing that I think you can buy here in Australia, you'll get like local content that gets dropped in, like a radio ad or something like that. Anyway, so one of these ads in Behind the Bastards actually had a campaign from a website called casualworksforme.com.au. And I want to play it for you, and I just want to get people's impressions as to, let's just have a listen. We can judge for ourselves and tell me if you can't hear it.
Like your higher hourly rate as a casual, I do, because it helps me make some extra cash at the bar when I've got a gap in freelance work. Under the new rules being proposed, casual workers could have to become full-time or part-time after a certain period with a company. This would mean fewer casual jobs and more people on set shifts without casual loading. Learn more about the proposed changes and join me in standing up for casual workers at casualworksforme.com.au. Authorised by W. Black, Business Council of Australia, Melbourne. Oh.
Wait. What was that? Business Council of Australia, Melbourne? Why would they be funding the Casuals campaign? What's going on there? That seems a bit funny. So, yeah, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about this casual workers legislation that's going on, and then we can dive into casualworksforme.com.au and some of the content on their website.
Well, sounds good. I am hearing myself back in the feed because we're live streaming through Discord. So I want to get you to turn that off. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's one of those things where it's like you hear the thing half a second behind, and then anyway. So yeah, Labor has proposed a bunch of changes to casual work. Now they're not, according to one expert, they're in terms of the spectrum of radically changing, new
This is a Labor government. I would not expect a radical change from anything that they would suggest. Only incremental changes here under a Anthony Albanese. It's incremental. It's one expert basically has described it as being the not so significant change in terms of the spectrum. But so basically what they're doing is there's a couple of things, and
but what Tony Burke has said, at least, I haven't read the legislation. I'm just listening to what the ABC is saying, what Tony Burke is saying in this case, but that they are going to change the definition or amend the definition of what a casual worker is, because at the moment there are certain loopholes which are causing some distress in certain industries. And secondly, they are going to allow casuals who work full-time hours or regular hours, a full-time sort of consistently, that they will be able to apply for a full-time position, ask for a full-time position within 6 months as opposed to the current 12. Okay, so
right, so it's a request. I, a casual worker, have been working consistent hours for this employee for whatever it is, was 12 months, now going to be 6 months. Can I be made into a permanent
full-time
part-timer or a full-time worker, please? So it's at the worker's request.
Exactly. And then I think you can request it then every 6 months thereafterwards if for some reason that doesn't go through. Now, I don't know what the guidance is in terms of whether or not, businesses must accept your request. I think if there are disputes,
unless there's a good reason not to, they should accept your request. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's a dispute, it goes to Fair Work, basically. Now, the definition of a casual worker, I think when the Liberals brought in a bunch of these changes, like with the previous government, they did implement the 12. The previous wasn't even a thing. I'm actually someone that was, probably could have used this. I was working as a casual employee for 6-7 years. Yeah. And I worked full-time hours for many of those years. Now, in some ways, it did work for me. I was able to go off and do auditions and do different things, but there were long periods there where, I probably could have just been a full-time employee and it wouldn't have,
But also, hang on.
Just got anyone's back.
Just because you're working as a casual, right, doesn't mean... So let's put some definitions around it. So there's some differences between casual and full-time workers or permanent part-time workers in that, if it's an evening or a weekend and you're working, you get an extra couple of dollars an hour. There's a loading.
Yeah.
Right, for working those inconvenient hours. You still get paid superannuation, but you don't get things like annual leave or sick leave, things like that. Because you're a casual worker, you can be let go at a moment's notice. Boss could just never call you for a new shift again, and that's fine. You have no recourse, any of that. Whereas if you're a full-time or a permanent part-time employee, you have access to some of those benefits. You get some sick leave, you get annual leave built up, you get those sorts of benefits.
Carers leave, that kind of thing. Yeah,
carers leave or domestic violence leave, and there's a few things like that where you get those benefits. Now those roles typically don't attract that leave loading. You get that standard sort of $24 an hour as opposed to 26 or 27. But you're getting a consistent rate and you're normally getting consistent hours. Now, with all of that said, you can still be an employer that has a permanent part-timer employee or a permanent part-time or a permanent full-time employee, and you can still offer them flexibility. There's nothing about the casual arrangement that's inherent to flexibility, right?
Yeah,
because they say, you can as a casual, you can turn down shifts whenever you want to. It's well, yeah, bro, but in practice, if you keep turning down shifts as a casual, guess who's not getting any more fucking shifts?
Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah, see ya.
and that was the rub, right? When I was in that position, it was I need to take a day here to go do an audition and then maybe do a shoot there afterwards if I'm successful. It was always basically, Karen will have to do your accounts, and what about Karen? And it's I get that. You don't want to be a dick to your colleagues, but business.
But this whole idea of flexibility, of flexibility is to suit the employer, not to suit the employee, right? It creates because people are desperate. You are working with a massive power imbalance where you could be let go at any second for any reason with no justification, and you've just got to accept what comes to you, and the hope that you can, make an extra. I love my extra $2 an hour. I've been kept in such a state of deprivation by my circumstances that I have to do just about anything for an extra $2 an hour between freelance gigs. What the fuck?
Yeah, so we'll get on to that.
I personally love my insecure casual work that strips me of the rights that decades of union activism built up.
We'll talk about the ad in a second, but it's a weird ad. and I guess the other thing to mention with casual and full-time work is, and as you sort of highlighted, is that casual work, you can just get let go. There's not.
That's the point. That is the point of it.
With full-time work, you kind of have to show that there are processes, like you have to show just cause.
You need to show that there's been a pattern of low productivity or bad behavior, or you can't just fire someone who's a full-time employee. There's got to be a good reason. And it needs to be documented. Otherwise, someone could take you to the Fair Work Commission and say I was,
unfairly treated,
unfair dismissal, right? So there are protections that are there for full-time work, and the idea that people are like, oh, I love having to work 3 jobs just to make ends meet for my casual job. I love the flexibility of being completely insecure at all times. Like it's just
it's a definitely. Like there are certain people that do like flexibility, but
my point is you can still have flexibility and be a permanent part-timer. It's just the hours change. You can still have that flex. There's nothing that says that having employee rights and flexibility can't coexist. There's nothing mutually exclusive about those two ideas.
Apart from employers not wanting to have to deal with the administrative burden of organising that, George, is probably
employers want absolute discretion to say you have to come in or else, otherwise I fire you, right? That's the reason that the business council is behind this fun. We're just a bunch of fun casuals making a website and multimedia advertising campaign to make sure big businesses don't need to comply with all that yucky red tape. What a bunch of fun casuals we are making a website about this. What a fun grassroots movement we've created. Sponsored by the Business Council of Melbourne, Australia.
Now, the important thing that to note about this is no one. Despite what this ad, and we'll show you the website in a second as well.
Oh yeah, the website's fun.
Despite what the ad and the website are sort of inferring, is no one's actually going to be forced to do this.
No one's going to be forced.
Want to say, as a casual, you're fine. You just get the extra option if you were in a position where you are not, where you would like the security of a full-time job. You're allowed to ask for that if you are
after 6 months.
The circumstances. After 6 months.
After 6 months, which think of the word casual. And what does casual worker mean? Casual worker suggests that to me that it's additional capacity that you can call on on a short-term basis in order to enhance
Surge
productive capacity at a time when you've got extra demand, like a summer job or something like that. That's what casual work says to me. It's like someone that we've hired on a short-term basis to help out while we're in between things. That's what casual work, the whole idea of it, the definition was meant to be. The idea was never to have a complete circumvention of the labor rights situation and people working in these casual jobs for years at a time without any protections whatsoever. Like that was never the point of casual work, but that's the way it's been used in recent years. And so this change is saying, hey, you have the right after 6 months to request to become a permanent worker, which seems fair enough. If you've been working there for 6 months and they haven't fired you for being terrible, if you're performing well and doing what you're supposed to do, you should be able to ask to be made a permanent employee. That seems completely reasonable and the most modest of changes that one could possibly suggest. And yet the Business Council is going hard with this advertising campaign, this AstroTurf, fake grassroots bullshit, trying to convince everyone that casual work is like, hey man, I just want my loading, man. Like, get your hands off my money, government. And it's like, no, why would anyone know? That's no.
Should we? So we can probably have a look at the website, which is casualworksforme.com.au,
which is something special. If you get a chance to go have a look at this website, we'll link it in the show notes. But for those viewing on the video feed, we've got a little feed of it here. But it's just like it's really fun. Like I can imagine the marketing brain shower that was happening. Okay, we're just making it fun. It's like lots of pink and orange, like really accessible for casuals. We're going to build up a grassroots movement of casuals that like really want to protect large multinational corporations.
And the first thing, if you scroll down, the first thing on the right-hand side says, After some time with the business or after working regularly, casual workers will be required to become permanent, full-time or part-time.
Which is a lie. That's
a complete lie.
That's just false.
Lie.
That is just a false thing that I guess you're allowed to put on a website somewhere. You're just allowed to say whatever the fuck you want about proposed legislation and then act like you're a grassroots campaign that's definitely not funded by big business. Okay, cool.
And then they've got all these like case studies. If you keep scrolling down,
the case study, yeah. So they say loss of casual loading, set working days, work-life balance impacted, less job security, which is hilarious. That's one of those fucking Orwellian, like, you know, freedom is slavery lines. Less job security by having a permanent part-time position. Explain that to me. And then it's got like a like or dislike button. I love less job security. But yeah, the case studies are something special. Retail. Say hi to Sarah, a casual retail worker, student, and real person. Say hi to Sarah. Definitely a real person. That's why she hasn't got a face, and why we've used a stock image of someone, just a random generic white female from the neck down, because she's definitely fucking real.
No face.
No face, Sarah. Say hi to Sarah No Face. She's absolutely stacked studying a podiatry degree. That's relatable, right? And relies on being able to pick up casual retail work when she doesn't have much due and dropping a few shifts when she's got tests coming up. Sound familiar?
Oh, we could always look at Austin. So say hi to Austin, a casual hospo worker and freelancer. Austin's a freelance creative who picks up casual hospo shifts when he needs some extra cash. He can barely commit to a gym schedule, let alone a permanent work schedule. So the proposed new rules would add a lot of stress to Austin's life. Austin's a fuck up.
Austin's such a fuck up. It's so funny that this advertising campaign, it's meant to look like it's like, you know, by casuals, for casuals. And yet, and the central through line throughout all of these case studies is just an absolute disdain for our generation. Have you noticed that? It's written by like boomers trying to sound like cool millennials. Don't you love your casual hospo work that you need to work between 3 different jobs? It's like, actually, Gary, I don't fucking love my casual hospo work. I do it because I need to fucking live. And what I actually want to do is the stuff I'm freelancing for. But because places like the Business Council have completely casualized work in Australia, I can no longer make enough money doing the thing I actually want to do in order to be able to live. And because of the gig economy, I've been forced to take on casual work in order to survive. It's like, oh, I love my casual job. No millennial, no fucking Zoomer, okay, Gen Zer loves their fucking casual job. We hate the casual jobs that we were forced to work. And the reason we had to do it is because you hollowed out the economy, you big business fucks.
I love you, man. That was great.
Oh, my God. Martina works casually as a teacher while juggling a few passion projects. So having to commit to part-time or full-time teaching would put a lot of pressure on her. Maybe Martina should just be paid enough to be a full-time teacher. Maybe Martina should have to worry about working a job as a fucking hospo worker on the side in order to be able to pay for crayons for her fucking students. Maybe we should just pay Martina enough in the first place.
Well, no, what they're saying there is Martinez wants to do her passion projects and the teaching.
She doesn't.
Anyway, but look, yes, this is the Business Council of Australia. Obviously, Business Council of Australia is a peak body group representing business, and they have a very particular point of view
you reckon?
With the way they lobby. Now, look, there are...
The FAQs are delightful as well. Why is casual work important? Casual work provides critical job opportunities for... what opportunities? To serve lattes to angry customers. Job opportunities for hundreds of thousands of Australians who require flexibility in their work, such as students, parents, and carers who prefer to receive a higher casual rate of pay rather than accrued leave and notice entitlements. I prefer being able to be the complete insecurity of being able to be let go with 1 day's notice. It also supports business continuity, meeting changing demands, and enhances Australia's reputation as a resilient and adaptable business environment. Hey, ChatGPT, give me a line of bullshit about how casual work makes Australia's economy more resilient.
I'm trying to work out who would have done the website for them, but they've only just got the links here for the Business Council of Australia, so I'm not sure who the marketing firm. It might not have even. Maybe they've got an in-house marketing team. I don't know, but I would have thought that would have been subcontracted as a Business Council of Australia. Well, it's they're supporting business, so why not use a local business to do your website? Anyway, that is a thing that is happening right now with as you said, it's complete astroturfing, which is
100%. Oh, sorry, AstroTurf. You looked like real grass there for a minute, mate.
AstroTurfing being the thing where it's like it looks like
fake grassroots movement.
Grassroots, yeah.
I heard there's an increase in casualisation of jobs in Australia. Is this true? No, that's not true. The proportion of Australians working casually has remained stable for more than 20 years. A lower proportion of Australians worked casually in August 2022 than August 2013 or August 1976. Without even checking the figures, I know for sure that's bullshit. I know
because of COVID, you fucking idiot.
I know for sure whatever spin you're trying to put on those statistics, these weird Augusts you've picked out in random moments in time, I'm sure that's not true. You know why? Because they didn't have fucking Deliveroo in 1996, okay? They didn't have Uber Eats. I know for a fact that the Australian workforce has become more casualized, that the gig workers didn't exist 20 years ago. So I know for a fact that insecure work, whatever categorization or way you've got of defining this or creatively drawing the lines around specific statistics that you want in order to make your case look good, I know it's bullshit because these things did not exist when we grew up 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I know this is false. You can't just say not true things. I guess you can just say untrue things on a website somewhere, but also like just drives me nuts.
22 is like the half the economy is coming out of COVID
yeah,
recession. Like, of course, it's not going to be like full gangbusters. Anyway, anyway, it's just delicious. And this is the kind of thing you get. And there's been a lot of this kind of thing with The Voice as well, and like I know a lot of the independents and Greens are sort of trying to band together to try and stop. There was like an AI campaign with like a fake Aboriginal man that was like trying to talk as though like how The Voice would affect him, but it was like completely AI generated or whatever that was going around. And then the No campaign were like, oh, that wasn't ours, that was someone else that's got the same point of view as us, but we didn't do that. They're like,
we didn't do that, but we love what they say.
Even though the website's like links to a bunch of people that like are affiliated with the campaign. Anyway, so the point being is that there's a bunch of stuff out at the moment politically where there is a lot of soft propaganda going around, or lobbying, as it were, to sway potential voters. And I guess a lot of it's due to the Liberals just trying to claw back momentum, I think, a lot of their stuff. But
a lot of this stuff with the casual work stuff, it just reminds me of echoes of work. You remember Work Choices? That whole thing, the industrial relations program that was, a big point of contention while we were growing up. Like it just reeks of that same sort of big business rhetoric. It's about flexibility. It's about, the choice to work when you want to work, but it's like all it does is completely dismantle the work that unions built up over decades protecting workers' rights. And to do so in a way that directly benefits big business, to give them the flexibility. It's not about giving Sarah, the fucking cafe worker, the flexibility to get 2 shifts a week when she wants 12. It's about giving the business or big business the flexibility to not have to deal with Sarah if they don't fucking want to, right? And to not give a shit about her rights and her protections. It's just very reminiscent of an age that I thought was completely past and behind us. And the way that it was very sort of just insinuated into this podcast like it was like a workers movement and like come support the workers, casualworksforme.com.au. So misleading. I was just like, man, we have to talk about this on the podcast. I'd do a whole fucking documentary on this.
I don't think it'll be the last we've heard of it either. Like the Liberal, Michaelia Cash, who's the opposition spokesperson on the matter, or the shadow minister, if you want to call it that, basically was gobsmacked at these proposed changes, and so I don't know whether they're going to fight them to the death. As Tony Burke has said, they're pretty minor changes really to work that's legislation that's already existing. So anyway, fun times. So the next story we've got here is one that made me think, there's definitely, like, even with all modern planning, modern technology, spreadsheets, you've got Asana, you've got Trello, different like project management softwares.
You got your Jira, you got your bloody, you got your Monday.com, you got your all sorts of project management tools.
You've got like lots of OH&S requirements now. If you're putting on a project or in this case here, an event or a festival or something like that,
a jamboree, if you will,
a jamboree, some sort of jamboree with scouts in South Korea, you'd think that you'd be able to sort of manage that event pretty well and should be fine. But it turns out if you put 30,000 people in a field somewhere with little to no infrastructure, you're going to have a bad time.
Well, especially if you don't look at the 14-day forecast, which
yes,
it seems like people did not. So as Adam mentioned, there has been an evacuation in South Korea for the World Scout Jamboree as Typhoon Khanun bore down last week. So it was about 37,000 scouts from 156 countries left the Jamboree site, and the quote from the email that they sent out to parents saying that said that there was a bus every 30 seconds getting students out there and taking them to accommodation in cities. But I did not know that people. I knew jamborees were a thing. People love a jamboree. Well, I didn't know that it was like big day out levels of. I didn't know it was like, bloody,
Burning Man.
Yeah, Burning Man or Coachella or something level fucking scout jamborees out there,
It's hilarious because before they actually had to order the evacuation, there were a lot of people sort of saying that they were pulling their kids out or they weren't quite happy with it. It was a bit dangerous. Like there wasn't really enough toilets there. The food situation was a bit dicey. It was very hot.
It's 37,000 scouts. You know what I mean? Like I'm not expecting caviar and, it's truffles. Like I would expect you getting a ham sandwich and you'd be fucking pleased about it. Like that's a lot of people to organise around.
So it's a lot of people to organise. But you'd think as well, like if there's children involved, you'd probably be a bit more sort of cautious about it.
Bring some muesli bars. For sure.
Yeah.
Bring some oats.
Yeah. Take some extra water, perhaps. Maybe it might be worth
100%.
it. But I mean, to be fair, the South Korean government got them out. They got them out and pretty efficiently. So there is still sort of some events happening around Seoul and South Korea related to the Jamboree, but the centralized event is not going to occur because there was. Heat wave, infrastructure, and sanitation concerns. And the US and UK contingents were pulling out anyway. So
Fire festival, eat your heart out.
I feel like they were kind of just jumping the shark a little bit. We're like, oh yeah, we've got to get everyone out because there's a typhoon coming, and it's not because we fucked
and
the
not
event
because it's
planning.
a shit show. The fact that it's a shit show is a completely separate event from the fact that there is a typhoon. Thank God there is a typhoon.
Like it's Fire Festival 2.0, this time with children. It's great.
That's what was definitely lacking. If you went and watched the Fire Festival documentary on Netflix, you think, you know what this island shit show really needs? More children.
More children.
More children.
Throw children. It's throw them into harm's way. It's fine.
That's good. So it sounds like people weren't hurt and they got everyone out.
No, I think everyone got out okay, which is good. So. With the North Korea sitting a couple of kilometers to the north of Seoul, you've probably got to get ready for a quick evacuation at any given moment.
Not where I would put 37,000 children is within striking distance of North Korea. Yeah,
nuclear armed North Korea.
Yeah, it's not where I'd send my kids. I'll be honest. Man, people go mad for their jamborees. 900 Australians.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of scouts.
A lot of scouts, yeah.
Do you reckon that's is that like band camp for, it's like, it's like an excuse to get away from parents and like have a bit of fun sort of thing?
Oh, I feel like parents are still there though. Like they're sort of hanging around as well. I don't know. It depends how old you are, I guess. Like, are you like a 16-year-old going on a jamboree or are you like a 8-year-old who doesn't know what time of day it is? Like
16-year-old me at a jamboree would have been, just getting in trouble. Let's put it that way. Loose unit. Loose unit.
Oh, no. Speaking of loose units, actually, this is a good segue. Philip Lowe had the chance to say more words this week.
Oh, good. And he's so good at it. And boy, did he. There's one thing Phil Lowe is good at. It's just really reading the room, hearing what people want from him and just delivering. So it was the last week for Phil Lowe, and he was. Sorry, say again.
He was at a parliamentary committee. That's what.
Yeah, and they just decided to give him a one last kicking for good measure, and Phil Lowe thought for some reason it'd be a great idea to mention that he's got a bunch of rich friends who are actually benefiting from high interest rates. Maybe it's not such a bad idea after all. Maybe I'm not such a bad guy. Yeah, people are suffering, whatever, but old mate, who's a CEO down at Macquarie, he's got a bunch of money in the bank and he's actually benefiting from high interest rates. So was it such a bad idea after all? Should I really go fuck myself? The answer is yes. Here's Phil Lowe saying words.
There are people, some of whom write to me, welcoming higher interest rates because they get more interest income. I remember for many years I've got letters from people bemoaning the low level of interest rates, particularly retirees. They were relying on interest income and the interest rate was zero, so they weren't getting any income. If you own your house outright, the house price is going up, so your wealth is increasing, the value of financial assets is rising, and you're getting more interest income. So there are people who are benefiting from the higher interest rates, and other people are in a lot of pain because of the higher interest rates. So there is this dispersion, and we do our best to take that into account and try and understand it. There are
some people are doing it tough, but people I speak to, they're doing great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's writing letters to Philip Lowe to be
fucking
like, good
nerds,
good guy, great job.
What fucking nerds? Go picking up the pen and go, dearest Phil.
I'm sure, as you said, there's probably some retirees and stuff that would be benefiting. And I'm sure, look, I mean, to be fair, I'm getting much more interest now in my bank account than I was, 12 months ago.
It's called
matters of thousands of dollars, which is fine. But it's not like the amount of money I'm getting into my bank account isn't changing my life. Do you know what I mean?
No, because you haven't got $3 million in cash just sitting there. But if you're a retiree, that is what is called a risk-free rate of return. Okay, it means I have to assume zero risk. If I put my money in the stock market, I'm assuming a risk, right? The stocks might go up, and I might get some more money, or the stocks might go down, and I might need to sell those stocks when the stocks are down, and maybe I'll lose money because I need liquidity, right? I need to pay for something. I need some cash. I got to pull money out of stocks. It's in an opportune moment. I take a loss on those stocks, right? That's risk. If you've got your money in cash and you're earning 5% in cash, 5% on your money, and your money is just liquid sitting in the bank, you can pull it out at any time. There is literally zero risk to you having that money there. That is what these people are benefiting from. There's people the people who are benefiting from this are literally retirees who have several $1 million in cash, and it's just sitting in the bank. It's not even deployed out in the economy trying to, invest it in a business, trying to create additional productive capacity. Yeah. It's just the interest rate being high just makes rich people richer because wealth accumulates to people who already have capital the fastest. And it's like, how is that? And he says, but it's pretty good because my mate's getting pretty rich off it because he's already rich. So that's good. Thanks, Phil. Fuckity bye, mate. I'd love to say that you'd be missed, Phil. I'd love to say it.
Which is probably also another good segue in terms of rich mates, that because of the rising interest rates, or the interest rates actually stayed stable the last two goes, I think, but because of the higher interest rates than they were
overall, they're towards around 6%, I think.
Certain businesses are doing very well out of that. One of those
kind
businesses turns out to be Commonwealth Bank, who posted a record $10 billion. That's $10 billion with a B, everyone. Profit because of, I don't know, I'm assuming the higher interest rates mean they get more income.
So basically what it means is they're a lot of, they're borrowing money from the RBA, taxpayer money, It's fixed rates, right? They have to pay it at 0.1% back to the RBA, and they're loaning out for 6%. So they're just pocketing the difference, or interest rates go up, and the amount that they pay out in cash on the deposits that you have in the bank is higher than what it was before, which was whatever 0.01%, 0.1%. But they're raising that rate much slower than they're raising the home loan repayment rate. So there's that gap in between. You're like, okay, yeah, we'll raise your home loan 0.25% straight away. We definitely have to do that because the RBA raised the cash rate, so we have to do that. So we're going to raise it immediately. But that rate that we pay you for your deposit, yeah, we'll raise that in 6 to 12 months. Eventually, we'll get around to it.
That's crazy. Like the interest rates of savings accounts, they've gone up very slowly, but also the second thing is a lot of them have massive conditions attached to them. So you've got to deposit $1,000 every month. And like, if you don't do that, you just get our base interest rate. And the base interest rate is fuck all. It's like 2% or something, so, not everyone, especially if cost of living,
the reason they
is
do
an
that
issue.
is because they want to be, by giving you that interest rate, they want to lock you in as like your main bank. Right? You're depositing your wage into that. And so you're using this for everyday transactions, and we're going to unstick you from some other bank that you're with and stick you with us. Right? So yes, we'll give you a higher interest rate for your money, for your deposits, but you got to earn it. You got to work for it. You got to work for daddy. We're not just going to give it to you.
In a cost of living crisis, not everyone's going to be able to put $1,000 a month into their bank account. Like that's not going to be a thing that they necessarily are going to be able to do. So they lose out on that interest rate because of it. And this is like ING, for instance, CBA do the same thing. And I think things like, other banks like Macquarie, those kind of ones, which have, if you look at the ones with the highest interest rates in terms of their savings accounts, the ones that have the highest interest rates are also the ones with the most conditions attached to it.
Yeah, of course. They're going to make you work. If they're going to pay you, well, they realize they don't have to pay you half the time if you fail these conditions. So yeah, we'll give you 5, whatever it is, 3%, 5%, but you've got to work for it.
But they're making squillions off it anyway. It's I find
don't you love a healthy banking sector? I love a healthy banking sector. Healthy, juicy, and girthy and veiny. I love a big, strong banking sector.
What happened to CBA shares actually after that announcement?
Good, I reckon.
Let's have a look.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so if we go 5 days, they went from 102.18 up to 104.81, but it's
they see me rolling
2.3%, which is over 5 days, which is pretty decent, really. Anyway, so
the bank shares are doing very well out of all of this, but they know Australians doing it tough. We know Australians doing it tough, out there, and that's why we're passing on all of the rate rises immediately, because we understand. We're just like you guys, only with $10.16 billion in profit. We're just like you.
What do you do with $10.6 billion?
Honestly, I don't know. And there's been a really good argument that's been put forward this week about a super profits tax, which is just like during the mining boom, to say like, hey, it's not because you've managed your business exceptionally well or you've created additional productive capacity in the economy or anything like that. You haven't done any business good. You just happen to be in the right business at the right place at the right time. And so you've gotten immensely wealthy off that. And maybe a portion of that money should be returned back to the Australian people, because they're the ones that are creating the credit flows. It's Australian dollars that are being, that's the thing that the thing with central banks that it's always sort of wigged me out in my brain. It's like, no, but the Australian people are sort of underwriting all of this. So we're lending this money to a middleman who then makes immense profits off of it, lending it right back to us at inflated interest rates. Like it just, in order to enrich who? Like Commonwealth Bank shareholders? Like for the purposes of benefiting whom exactly? Like why would we not just why would we not just bank directly with the RBA then, if that was the case? Like, why not allow us to do that?
I don't know. The RBA's hasn't been around forever, I don't think. The RBA is actually only a relatively newish mechanism, I want to say. You can fact check that for me. But it's a funny sort of It is a funny system. And the other thing being as well is that, like,
1960.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it hasn't been around since, like, Federation or anything.
No.
So, I don't know. It's like they make $10 billion profit off that, and I don't know. The whole system is just sort of...
Which is fine.
broken.
I'm not against profit. I think businesses should be profitable. They should be healthy. But there is a certain, like, when there are areas of the economy, like there are areas of banks still that are shedding jobs, okay? And like, you know, financial and corporate sort of Australia areas where there are redundancies and people shedding jobs. It seems like that's completely untethered from the reality of the economy, because these businesses, as we can see here at the Commonwealth Bank and all the other big four banks as well, mind you, declaring multi-billion-dollar profits, clearly they're not struggling. It's not having to do it out of economic necessity. It is a ideological pursuit to cut workers whenever possible, wherever possible, to get rid of workers and add more money to the bottom line. It's got nothing to do with being in dire straits and having to do it for the viability of the business. It is an ideological pursuit, right? It's neoliberalism made manifest, where any opportunity we can find to shed workers and deliver short-term results to the shareholders, we're going to do it. And it's like, well, that might work for a year or two. That's stock graph goes up and to the right for a year or two. That looks real good. Okay. But then what happens is, like with Qantas, right? You hollow out your company and outsource baggage handling and outsource
everything,
flight attendants and outsource pilots and you create a shell company, and that shell company subcontracts the pilots that were your pilots to their subcontracted company, which is really a company that you own. Okay. In order to pay pilots less for the routes that they're already running. Well, you do that enough and the quality of the brand suffers. Like you do that for 14 years or 15 years and all of a sudden the graph doesn't go up and to the right anymore. And all of a sudden people start going, actually, this brand is trash. I hate dealing with this brand. This is annoying and terrible. The service is terrible. The product is terrible. I don't like this anymore. Why am I buying this? That's what happens when you think of only short-term profits at the expense of everything else. Like,
and it's probably a good segue back to the start of the show, where casual works for me, though, George. So
casual works for me. It
works for people.
It works for me having my rights insubordinated. I love having to work whenever my boss snaps his fingers at a total whim at a job that I despise, because I'm working 3 jobs in order to make ends meet.
All fun. So yeah, that's the show for this week. And if you have any questions, you can see the website. And I don't know why I'm sort of doing a fake outro here, but that's sort of
on that note
where we're at.
We have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist. That's Facebook, X, Instagram, it's really, really mucked up my flow. TikTok, YouTube, at Unnatural Show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, at George Tsivos.
You can follow me down to the Australian Jamboree, where I'll be making sure they have good public toilets.
And make sure you visit us at our home on the web, casualworksforme.com.au. Join the movement. It's definitely real, filled with real humans.
Do you reckon they did that in like half a day and they were like, is that lunch?
It's 10:30.
That's lunch. Yeah, it's lunch.
Yeah, let's
Pub?
go. Yeah,
Pub.
yeah.
They got a $20.
We will be served by casuals whom I despise. But I guess we'll go to lunch.
They got a special on. It's a $20 Palmer and beer special. So
that's great. How do they pay for that? Must be by exploiting the workers. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.